the Hawaii Bad Boy X Kiwi Ears Punch. Let's talk about it. Now, if you are new to my videos, I always talk about where I got the IEM, and that is an important part of any review that I do. This is not my IEM. A friend of the channel has lent me their copy so I could review it. That is all I'm going to say about that. If you know, you know. This is a 5-driver IEM that retails around for $450, but when it was being sold originally, it was going for around $400, even cheaper with $50 Linsol coupons. It comes in 4.4, 3.5, and it uses branded drivers. We'll talk maybe a little bit more about the branded drivers, but this is one of the cheaper options for an EST out there. In that regards, it is quite remarkable. Let's start by talking about the build quality, and then we'll kind of go from. Now, the shell has been a little bit divisive. The design is not for everyone, but I kind of dig it. You know, I mean, it's kind of a fun logo with some unique, fun colors. I don't know if any other IEMs like it, so, you know, I like the faceplate design. Now, as we compare this to what I normally compare, the Magic 1, we notice it is a little bit of a large shell, but it has a really nice nozzle that holds ear tips on extremely well. It is a little bit pointy and sometimes slightly uncomfortable, but overall I feel that this for me is a great shell, and I don't have any major faults with it. It has nice contours, it doesn't really sit in ear weird, and it's just, again, I like this shell. I think they did a good job with it. It is a flat 2-pin cable connector. And it is vented for those people that need it. Again, nice shell, no massive problems. I personally think this is a fantastic shell, and I love it. Kiwi has included a nice case. Again, I don't have a full unboxing experience for you, but the case they included, it's nice. This cable is fantastic. You can see the blue and red dots to show you which side you're on. Love that. I love it when cables use red and blue. Or clear, easy to read right and left. It does have ear hooks, and it does have a chin slider that kind of doesn't stay in place super well. It's, you know, it's okay. If a chin slider is really what you need, you might want to cable swap this, right? It's a little bit loose, but I mean a little bit nitpicky, but I always want to be clear about how I feel about chin sliders for those that need it. It has a non-branded Y-split, but it's nice and pretty. I like this cable. It feels spongy. It feels good in hand. I feel like this is a solid cable for this price, and it's not bad. Branded termination. Again, you can get this in 4.4 or 3.5. So how is it? How does it sound? Bassy. Very bassy. But it has good mids, and it's clear. It's clean and defined, and it's hard getting a good bassy set that has good mids, and they've done a good job at this IEM, and I really like this IEM, and I think it's extremely impressive for what it is. It has a lift in the air on some graphs, which it didn't on my graph, but I feel like I feel that just a little bit, and I like this tuning a great deal. It's a hard tuning to pull off, a bassy but detailed with a little bit of air, and I feel that this IEM does a very good job with it. I wanted to talk a little bit about drivers. They are doing EST drivers in this, and it is one of the cheaper versions of EST drivers. I do not claim to know everything about drivers, and I am a fan channel, and I do not do collabs or anything like that. But there are a lot of new planar IEMs out there. Critical in this new video when he talked about the Moondrop Meteors, talking about the new microplanars, which is a kind of a big deal right now in the IEM space. Many people feel that those are going to take over the EST drivers. So were they able to do this at a cheap price because the EST drivers are phasing out? There's also the Elysian Acoustics Lab Apostle that is releasing soon. That is using a second generation of EST drivers. So was there a kind of a discount on EST drivers and they're just kind of using them and throwing them in this model? I don't know. I'm not trying to say why that's cheap, but I do feel this is a good thing for the market to be able to get a good tuned IEM at this price. There was another model, the Mega 5 EST bass. There was going to be a collab, and then basically HBB went in one direction, and then High Senior made their own IEM, and I appreciate that. I think when Chris or HBB can do his own thing and make a product that's significantly cheaper, I think that's an extremely positive thing. I have my Mega 5 EST bass, and I've been doing a lot of ABs. Let's start and look at the graph. Okay, let's look at the Punch's graph. As a nice graph, you'll notice it has a ton of bass, which could be too much for some people. We'll talk about some other IEMs for people. Like some people, if they get too much bass, it is a little bit much. This is pretty much on my extreme level of too much bass. And in some ways, I feel like this is about any more than this, I would have to say no. But I like this level of bass, and I think it's really sufficient. You'll notice the treble is maybe not as extended as some people like. Some people like a little bit more. And there are some thoughts that to get good treble, you need a little bit more lift. Or when you have a lot of bass, you need a little bit of lift in that treble. And we'll show that to you here, guys, in a bit, how some other tunings may work. So this may not be enough treble for people, but I do think this is a solid graph overall, and it is a clean graph, and it is very nice. And it's really close to the target overall. The first thing I want to talk about, and this is going to be a process, because this is an IEM that's been much anticipated, and I actually have a lot of, I have a lot of interest in this IEM, and I want to talk about that. There is the High Senior Mega 5 EST. Now, this is an IEM, for those that don't know, that have been pretty hyped by a lot of members in the community, like, Doug and Griffin from headphones.com. And so it's, it's kind of a pretty big IEM in that regards. And a lot of people, this really fits that new meta. Now, a lot of audiophiles, myself included, I like the Mega 5 EST, and I do think it is a nice set, but it is boring. It does lack interest, and it's a little bit, to quote some other audiophiles, it is kind of like clean water and boring. And so that's kind of a comparison here, and let's kind of tell a story as we move up the ladder. The next one I want to show is this is what I call the High Senior Mega 5 EST Jaytis Custom Tuned Edition. Now, this is an edition that I bought, and I eventually sold it to a member of my Discord for a reasonable price. And it is a great IEM. This is kind of like HBB was talking about this IEM, and I contacted High Senior and got it, and I made a review of this. And, and I really like the High Senior Mega 5 EST Jaytis Custom Tuned IEM that I got. And it's basically the Mega 5 EST. Now, kind of after this video went out, and a little bit later, I am not saying I had anything to do with it. I don't want to be that egotistical. But there was that split that we talked about earlier where Chris decided to make his own collab. And he made his own collab for much cheaper. And so let's look at the Mega 5 EST bass. All right, now the Jupiter. Now back into it. So what do you notice on the graph? You don't really notice a ton. What you'll notice is that the HBB punch, it's about the same. On some graphs, you'll see a little bit more extended air. On my rig, it did not show up. You also notice a little bit more sub bass, which does show up. How do they sound? How do they differ? Very, very similar. Almost the same. I do feel the punch has a little bit more pizzazz and a little bit more of the stuff that's off the graph. I could show you other graphs that graph almost the same as these guys, and they're not going to sound the same. That's something to remember. But for me, the punch has a little bit more pizzazz, but it also has, sometimes that pizzazz can kind of hinder the music. I would have to say the Mega 5 EST bass is a smoother set. It is a nice set, and I encourage you to check out my reviews of those two, the Jaytis Custom and the Mega 5 EST bass, if you're so inclined. But it is a smooth set that does a lot of things well. The frequency response on a lot of these are the same. So why would you pick one or the other? Let's get into the nitty gritty. The punch is currently $450, but there might be sales on it someday, bringing it back down to $400 as its launch price was. And if you can get a Linsol $50 coupon, it brings it back down to almost $350. And so a lot of people who originally got the punch got it for $350. The High Senior Mega 5 EST base is a little bit better package, but as Audio Amigo has pointed out, there was a connector that wasn't balanced that could be a problem. So, I mean, there's, as far as like, you really shouldn't buy an IEM for the packaging, but it is a nice value add. It's like someone saying thank you to me after you get something. So can I really justify the $150 extra, maybe even $250 for the Mega 5 EST base when there's something like the Kiwi Ears X HBB punch exists? Sonically, no. Sonically, I kind of prefer the punch more. But again, there's a smoothness sometimes that hits with the Mega 5 EST base. I A-B'd it for the last couple of days, and it's basically a toss-up, and it's a very close comparison. And it's hard for me to say one is better or the other, but there are slight and subtle differences between the two. But it's hard to say which one you might prefer. But I definitely can see why people would like the punch, especially people that want oodles of sub bass. And again, I do feel there's a little bit more of a lift in it, which isn't really shown up on my graph, but I've seen it on other people's rigs. Now, we compare this to, I think, the only other collab that I've seen from HBB that is better, the punch, or the punch versus the Jupiter. The Jupiter is a fantastic set. You'll notice it has a little bit less bass. It's a little bit more subdued. Its treble is a little bit more relaxed. It's a little bit more of an L-shaped. And I do feel that like the execution of the Jupiter makes it overall, I would say, a better set. Now, is it way better? To me, if the Jupiter had come in at like $700 or $800, it would have just crushed the market and probably destroyed all the Monarch Mark IIIs that they were trying to sell on Linsol, and that's my current take. I do think the Jupiter is an absolutely fantastic set, and if you ever get a chance to demo it or purchase one, if you have the means, I would recommend it over the punch. But I could see people preferring the punch, and it is a better value as the punch, and that's something to note. All right, one thing I want to show of kind of like some of the faults and stuff. One of my new favorite IEMs that I actually got on loan, and this review will be coming out. It's actually already been shot, and it'll probably come out tomorrow, is the Symphonium Elise Europa. And you notice about the Europa has a little bit less bass, a little bit more treble. It's a little bit more extended through here, but also a nice dip right here at that, about 4.5K. This is a really nice set. It's more expensive. These two, like, they trade blows. Again, this is a $450 set, which is versus basically one of the best sets I think out there, which easily could, I think I put it in my top 7, but it easily could be top 3 depending on whether the fit works for you. Now the punch has a better fit, a better shell. For me, I like resin shells and some metallic shells, and so that does play a little bit in how I ranked. And I will say that the punch, it hits a lot of the marks that I would need from an IEM, and it competes with the IEMs that are so much more expensive. Another one I want to talk about is the Dunu Brain Dance. Now, I really like the Brain Dance. And you look at these two, and you'll notice the Brain Dance is pretty lean. It has a nice, clean presentation, and I like the sound of it a lot. One thing I will show you is that if you take the Brain Dance and you add in an impedance adapter, you can even do a little bit less, but you get a very kind of a similar curve. And this is a really nice set with the impedance adapter, and I really am quite impressed with it. This to me, it's a really good set for a little bit more. And now we talk about some of the better sets in that region. I want to talk about those. And I think, if you get the Brain Dance and the treble doesn't bother you, some people get annoyed by this upper treble on these new microplanars, and that is something to note, and that is a valid concern. But I've also heard of people getting bothered from ESTs, so it's really a personalized thing that you have to make a choice with. Honestly, I think the Brain Dance, if you have the Dosh and you have the money and they're priced the same, I think it would be a little bit better to go because it has a unique advantage in that regard. But I do think the Brain Dance has some features about it that make it a little better. It's also packaged very, very well. Not that the Kiwi Ears punch is bad. It's not nearly as Spartan as some of the Hifiguides, but it is a little bit boring. Like Moondrop and Dunu are doing some really amazing things if packaging is important for you, and that the punch really doesn't do that for you. So I mean, as far as like overall value and package, I think the Brain Dance offering a couple tonalities and tunes could be really something really good, especially if you can get it on sale, and these two are about the same price, give or take. Another one to think about is the Zenz Magrid T Pro. The T Pro is a very nice set. It's really good. It has a pure metal shell. It does have a little bit more subdued bass if that's going to be a bother to you. It's a little bit cheaper depending on how much you get it. I've seen it used market around $300, and with buy it on Linslow with coupons here on sales, you could probably knock that price down a little bit. It is a very nice set. It is really well packaged. It has a little bit better treble, a little bit more subdued bass. It's a very nice IEM. I don't think it has that magic, the punch, if you want to call it, or the EST drivers that the punch does. I do like the punch better, but we're talking a little bit value and what some of the other options are at this level and how this does versus them. And the punch does really well, and I do feel it's worth the slight increased price of it. Another one I want to talk about is the Dyna Quattro. This is a really big favorite of mine. It's like basically, it feels like a solid dynamic driver. Its shell's not as nearly as comfortable as the punch, but your mileage might vary. But for me, it has a little bit more subdued bass, has a little bit more upper mids, which might work for you, might not. You might find that shouty. I like this set a great deal. And I think the Dyna Quattro can do some great things. Now, its upper air and extension is kind of dead in the water, and something like the punch is going to be better in that regards with its better drivers. The Dyna Quattro does some interesting things that I don't always love, but as far as just a bassy set that doesn't just thunderously crack on your skull, I think the Dyna Quattro is kind of the way to go for cheaper. But again, for overall balanced tonality, I think the punch has better extension and a lot of other things. Another one, there's options. Right now the market's flooded with good stuff. I really like the Alpha Explorer. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend you to try it. I think it punches above its category, and if you can't afford the punch and you're like, I want a bassy set, the Explorer, you can get it on sale for around $80. It's a special set, and as far as like value people and people that can't afford the punch but need a good set, there's not. I mean, it has less bass, it's a little bit more subdued, but still a nice amount of bass. And I think that's kind of the better cheap option if you need something that's still good but not as much. For me, I really like the P7. I think it represents a great value in the market for me. Again, it's a little bit more at like $240. And I think that's kind of a really good set. Like they're competitive with each other. And I think as far as value goes, that's kind of would be my pick for value. I do think the punch is worth it for the extra money, and I do think it's a better set. But is it that much better that it justifies the extra price? Probably not. Kind of depends on what you need. I mean, the punch, depending on what price you get, it's an extremely good value. But, it's something to consider. Like, again, this level of bass is not going to be for everybody, and it can be off-putting to people that are neutral heads. Like, if you're someone that likes a really neutral tuned set, the punch is not for you. It is a very bassy boy, and there's other sets out there like the P7, which are good sets and a little bit more subdued for people that want it. So we're going to ask ourselves now a question. Is the punch the best collab of 2024? And I'm going to go and say far as saying yes. Is it the best IEM? No, but it's a great value. Let's talk about collabs and how it does versus the other ones that I've reviewed. And I can't really think of anything else. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me in the comments I'm wrong. There's other ones you guys think we should have done comparisons on. The first one, the Dunu Da Vinci. Now, Dunu Da Vinci, it's so meta-tuned. It's kind of dull. I mean, I know people like it. And I don't think it's a bad set. It has really nice treble, but I feel like there's something about the organicness that doesn't really hit. And I think the Dunu Da Vinci, kind of hits that problem a little bit with what, the Mega 5 EST Original had where it's just a little bit too dull for my take. And it may be just too much treble and not, it's not a balanced sound. Too much treble, a little bit less bass. It is a nice IEM, and I would love to see a version 2 of that might have fixed some of the things, and it is an interesting tonality, and I like it. But there's, it's an interesting set in that regards. I'd like to do New Da Vinci, but its bass isn't satisfying for me, and its treble can be a little bit treble skewed. And I think the Punch for me is the better set. And for people, that like what I like, I would recommend the Punch. And I think, that if you really want the meta tuning, the KE4, from Kiwi, I think is the better, cheaper option with a little bit more subdued tuning. Might be the better way to go. Let's pull that up really quick. All right, and there you have your KE4. Let's get rid of the Da Vinci. And you'll notice like the KE4, basically same upper mids and treble, a little bit more extension over here on the graph, but a lot less bass, which may or may not work for you. But that's also a really competent IEM that might work for people if that's something you want, with like a neutral tonality that sounds really good in ear. Another one that came out this year, the Estrella. Now I like the Estrella, and what I want to show you is let's normalize this at 500 to see what happens. And when you normalize this at 500, when you look at it normally, you have to be careful where you normalize. But 500 or 450 is basically where most people normalize. But let's go back to 500. It doesn't really matter that much. But what you notice here is that bass is pretty similar. A little bit more on the Punch. Estrella has good bass, but the Estrella does have quite a bit of upper mid treble and presence region. It does have quite a bit of air, like that air region. It's just like everything here is just whoop and just kind of jacked up just a little bit. And that is something to note for people. I like the Estrella. I think it's a great set, but I do find it bright on many songs. I don't find that way with the Punch. The Punch is more subdued. It has nice extension, nice details, nice twinklies and sparklies. And to me, it's the better set. Couple ones to talk about. The Dusk DSP. I don't know, man. People love the Dusk. Had no treble. Had a reasonable amount of bass. I just thought it was kind of okay. It's a nice set. But, I don't know. It feels a little bit too much for me. I think the Critical Dusk is a little bit overhyped. But for those people that like it, go for it. I think it's a good set. But, when you look at the Dusk DSP and you can look at this in its regular wired form, and you'll notice a couple things. Let's get rid of the DSP version. I don't really like DSP IEMs, but if you notice you have the non-version, it's almost no bass here. It's a very, 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 very flat tune and tonality. And it gets a little bit dull, a little bit boring, not super exciting. I think the Punch, depending on the genre of music, I kind of like the Punch more. I mean, both of them kind of have that, the bass isn't quite exactly right, kind of a thing going on for them, but they're both good sets in their own right. But I have to give the advantage of, collab of the year to the Punch in my regards. All right, let's rank this up. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about my ranking list just so people know significance of things. So the Punch, I'm giving it a 9.2. I think it's a nice set overall, a S-. Now, when I rank these, I rank them by this score right here, the overall audio score, and then I rank them bottom to top. So what it means is that I see all my 9.2s right here as being kind of like around that same level. And I feel like this guy, it competes with a lot of IEMs at a stronger price point. It has a fun but neutral to my ears tonality, and it does some things well. A lot of other IEMs have massive faults. The Punch doesn't have a lot of massive faults. It's really nice. It has a clean amount of bass that's not jarring or unexpected. Like, there's other IEMs that are bassy to me, like the Scarlet Mini or the Fat Frequency Deuce, that are just a little bit jarring to me. I feel like the warmth and sub bass and mid bass, and just everything kind of mixes really, really well on the punch, and it's very nice, and I like it a lot. It's a great IEM and one of the better values out there. This 3-star rating, if you're talking about the 9.2s, if you wanted to put something like that there and call it a great value, yeah, it is a great value. But I mean, again, if you look down here, there's a lot of other IEMs like the Studio 4, like the Zenz Magrid T Pro, the Awful Performer 7, which, aren't too far behind. As far as rating goes, there are differences between the bass and the punch. But they are so very subtle. It's almost like comparing two DACs or amps and trying to really hone in and talk about what they are. But from a value standpoint, the punch, it's basically the same, and it does a fantastic job and plays my library great. The IEM game is it's tough. It's always hard to find value. And it's nice when you see something from a good company, from a collaborator that sounds good, feels good in the ear, and doesn't come across overly bright and hits the target of what people are trying to pull off. I like it how, that they really tried to bring a cheaper price and a cheaper tuning of this that benefited customers. I think so often there's so many audiophile companies that put people on blast, and that they don't really look for the bottom line for people. I really feel with this set, in this particular instance, and the way that this set was designed, and the team was switched around from one company, from High Senior to Kiwi, was a really fantastic thing that helped produce a great deal of value. So, should you buy it? That choice is yours. This is just an IEM that I have from a buddy I thought I'd do a little review of. Thanks for watching to the end. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know and I'll try to answer them. But I think they've done a fantastic job with this set. Hope you guys have a great day, and bye-bye. You're still here. It's over. Go home. Oh, you're expecting a teaser for our next video. Well, we don't have that kind of money. What are you expecting? One of those store reviewers to show up in a saucy little leather number? Go. Oh, I can tell you one thing. We are going to have a collab video. We have no idea what it's going to be. Probably Kryn, maybe Chris. Or Joyce. Don't deny it. She's got range. Go. Get out of here. Go.
Go!
Go.
Go on with you!